Now we hear Jacob say to his sons, listen, there are options. There is a solution. There is a means to an end outside of these boundaries, outside of this self-evaluation conversation. And he begins to encourage his sons by saying this, watch this. There is corn in Egypt. Maybe we could use that as a subtitle for you today. There is corn outside of your boundaries. There is corn, provision, outside of your self-evaluation. There is corn. There's a blessing if you can trust God and believe Him, that no matter what your present condition is today, I hear God saying, but there is corn. There's hope. There is hope even in the midst of a famine. Wow. At the same time, there's famine in the land where Jacob and his sons are living. At the very same moment that they are experiencing a crisis in their life, at the exact time and space where they are wrestling with not having enough, at that moment, there's still corn in Egypt. Now, you got to back up to what I shared at the beginning of the story, that God spoke to Joseph through the interpretation of Pharaoh's dream to prepare the house of Egypt for the oncoming famine. Can I share this with you? Famines don't catch God off guard. Just because there's a famine at your house, watch this, doesn't mean there's a famine in God's house. I want you to get that settled in your spirit. Just because there's lack in my house doesn't mean there's lack in God's house. What I mean by that, just because in our world things are getting tight, things are becoming less, because in our world our economy is shrinking, it's not growing the way it should be globally and locally, it doesn't mean that God is without solution. Doesn't mean that God is losing anything. You know, you and I, we might be losing money on the stock market. We might be losing money on the value of our home. We might be losing money even in the workplace, not getting paid as much as we were in previous times. But it doesn't mean that God is losing anything. As a matter of fact, it's clearly stated that the earth still belongs to Him and all of the fruit that comes from the earth. The Bible declares that the silver and the gold belong to Him. Cattle on 1,000 hills belong to Him. Here's the teaching point. God is not ever lacking because you and I are going through a crisis. In advance, God already has provision set aside in Egypt. We simply have to figure out how to get outside of my self-made boundaries, how to get outside of my self-evaluation, my self-judgment, and be able to connect with God's provision. God is making corn available outside of my problem. We need to practice self-encouragement instead of self-boundaries, self-judgment, condemnation. Encourage yourself in the Lord. Believe that God has made corn available, but it's on the other side, or it's outside of your present condition. You got to be able to see what God has already done, what He's already prepared for us.